Welcome back to User Upload, where we focus on cybersecurity and ethical hacking. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the basics of Active Directory and how it's used within organizations. Approximately 90% of the global Fortune 1000 companies use Active Directory. If an organization's estate uses Microsoft Windows, you're almost guaranteed to find Active Directory. Since AD is used for identity and access management of the entire estate, it holds the keys to the kingdom, making it a very likely target for attackers. Now we're going to go over how to set up Active Directory, users, group policies, some security management, and trust trees and forests. And we'll sprinkle a little extra in there as well as we move along. Let's get started. Here. Scrolling down, we get a little diagram of Windows domains and the ability to start the machine, so we'll go ahead and do that. Now, picture yourself administrating a small business network with only 5 computers and 5 employees. In such a tiny network, you'll probably be able to see and configure each computer separately without a problem. You will manually log into each computer, create users for whoever will use them, and make specific configurations for each employee's accounts. If a user's computer stops working, you'll probably go to their place and fix it on site. While this sounds like a very relaxed lifestyle, let's suppose your business suddenly grows and now has 157 computers and 320 different users located across 4 different offices. Would you still be able to manage each computer separately, manually configure policies for each user across the network, and provide on-site support for everyone? The answer is no. To overcome these limitations, we can use Windows domains. Simply put, a Windows domain is a group of users and computers under administration of a given business. The main idea behind a domain is centralizing the admin accounts and the common components of a Windows computer network in a single repository called the Active Directory. Basically, think about logging into a university login system or network, right? Through using your credentials anywhere in the world. That's essentially what's happening. So we've been provided with some credentials for the domain controller, and we can go ahead and RDP into that. Before we do that, we are going to take a look at Task 3's Active Directory, where it explains a little bit more about what's going on. The core of any Windows domain is the Active Directory Domain Service, ADDS. The service acts as a catalog that holds the information of all objects that exist on your network. Amongst many objects supported by AD, we have users, groups, machines, printers, shares, and many others. Let's look at some of them. We have users, some of the most common objects in AD. Users is one of the objects known as security principals, meaning that they can be authenticated by domain and can be assigned privileges over resources like files or printers. You could say that a security principal is an object that can act upon resources in the network. Users can be used to represent 2 of these types of entities: people as well as services. Going on to machines. Machines are another type of object within Active Directory. For every computer that joins the Active Directory domain, a machine object will be created. Machines are also considered security principals and are assigned an account just as a regular user. This account has somewhat limited rights within the domain itself. Machine accounts themselves are local admins on the assigned computer. They are generally not supposed to be accessed by anyone except the computer itself. As with any other account, if you have the password, you can use it to log in. Identifying machine accounts is relatively easy. They follow a specific naming scheme. The machine account name is the computer's name followed by a $sign. So for example, we have DC01 here, and the machine name would actually be DC01 with a $sign. Taking a look at security groups. If you're familiar with Windows, you probably know you can define user groups to assign access rights to files or other resources to entire groups instead of individuals like you would do for a specific user, and that is a security group. Real world example, you wouldn't want the interns having read and write access to files that management or confidential segments of your company are working with. Scrolling down, it actually is kind enough to provide us with a little bit of diagram of security groups here. We have domain admins. Users of this group have admin privileges over the entire domain. By default, they can administer any computer on the domain, including the domain controllers. Server operators use this group admins, domain controllers. They cannot change any admin group memberships, basically second in command. Moving third and backup operators, we have account operations, domain users, which is regular users, and we have computers and domain controllers. Here's a quick directory. Here's a quick little depiction of how to get to the Active Directory if you're using the search functionality on Windows, or you push the Windows key and type in users, it'll bring you to the Active Directory app here. You just push enter, it'll load up. From here, it continues to explain that checking our machine, we can already see, let's see, the open up window, you can see a hierarchy of users, computers, and groups that exist in the domain. These objects are organized in organizational units, or OUIs, which are container objects that allow you to classify users and machines. So taking a look here, we have thm.local, which would be the local domain right here. And we have students, group student, IT, management, marketing, sales, are the different departments here. And it's basically just explaining how Active Directory is structured. Let's go ahead and launch the machine. It's basically saying how Active Directory is structured. Let's go ahead and answer these questions so we can launch the machine. Which group normally administrates all computers and resources in the domain? That's domain admins. What would be the name of the machine account associated with the name Tom PC? Tom PC followed by $. And suppose our company creates a new department for quality assurance. What type of containers should we use to allow all group quality assurance users so that policies can be applied consistently to them? Answer for that is organizational units. Let's move on to managing users in Active Directory. Your first task as the new domain administrator is to check the existing AD, OUIs, and users, as some recent changes have happened to the business. We have been given the following organizational chart and are expected to make changes to the AD to match it. So here we have management, general manager is Daniel. We have the marketing, sales, and IT departments. And we have a little section here deleting extra OUs and users. First thing you should notice is that there's an additional department OU in your current AD configuration that doesn't appear in the chart. We've been told that it was cleared due to budget cuts and should be removed from the domain. If you try to right click and delete the OU, you'll get the following error: you do not have sufficient permissions. So basically, it's probably going to have us change permissions for one of the users, and then we'll delete the organizational unit here. From here, we're going to launch the RDP session, and we've navigated to the Active Directory here. Now, the screen got a little bit cut off for me, but as you can see, they've provided the same diagram here where you're going into users and groups, selecting users and groups, checking names, and delegating different permissions. So we'll go ahead into the sales delegate control here. Welcome to the delegation control wizard. Next, we're going to add this user here, Philip. All right, basically we're going to allow Phil to taking a look at task 4, managing users in the AD. It's going to provide us with a real world example here where we're going to be delegating a task. So one of the nice things that you can do in AD is to give specific users some control over organizational units. This process is known as delegation and allows you to grant users specific privileges to perform advanced tasks on OUs without needing a domain admin to step in. One of the most common use cases for this is granting IT support. One of the most common use cases for this is granting IT support the privileges to reset other low privilege users' credentials. According to our organizational chart, Philip's in charge of IT support, so we'd probably want to delegate the control of resetting credentials over the sales, marketing, and management OUs to him. So in this example, we're going to go ahead and do that. At that point, we'll reset the credentials for Sophie and find a flag on her desktop and answer the questions. Feel free to launch the Windows machine or the lab here at this point. And we're going to take a look at delegating control from the IT admin over to Philip here so we can reset the credentials for Sophie. So let's go ahead and delegate control over here to Philip. So we'll go here into computers and groups. Now this did get cut off a little bit, but it's whatever. Here's a diagram of what you're actually looking at. Users, computers, and groups. We're going to add Philip at the domain to the delegation. And here we have the ability to delegate different things. And here we're going to use the ability to reset passwords for users in this group. We'll complete the delegation control wizard. Finish. All right, so now Philip should be able to reset credentials for any user in the sales department. Well, you probably want to repeat these steps to delegate password resets over the marketing and management departments. We'll leave it here for this task. You're free to configure the rest of the OUs how you desire. Now, let's use Philip's account to try and reset Sophie's credentials. All right. Now let's use Philip's account to try and reset Sophie's password. Here are Philip's credentials for you to log in via RDP. So basically, although we've changed the ability for, okay, so now let's use Philip's account to try and reset Sophie's password. Here are Philip's credentials for you to log in via RDP. Let's go ahead and start the RDP session. Here we RDP'd in as Philip. Now we're going to go ahead and reset the credentials for Sophie using a PowerShell script. All right, so you'd think that we'd be able to actually open up AD and change Sophie's credentials through the Active Directory, but we're not actually able to do that, which is no problem at all. We'll launch PowerShell and we're going to use a script here to do that for us. The PowerShell script will start with set AD account password. We'll use the followed by user -r reset, enter whatever cred you'd like, and here we can read the rest. We're going to make it larger. And we're going to prompt the we're going to prompt it to have her set a new password upon logging in. We'll set the new password here. So it performed the operation correctly. Awesome. And it shows on target, on Sophie and sales, etc., etc. Here we can set AD user. So now that we've go ahead and changed the password for Sophie, we're going to go ahead and set AD user to change password upon next login. So set AD user, change password at login, $ is equal to true, identify, set verbose. Looks like that's worked correctly as well. From here, we can exit the session and RDP in as Sophie and get the flag. We'll launch our remote desktop session here. Log in as Sophie. Here we can see that it's actually prompted us just like we told it to change the password before signing in. We'll hit OK. We'll type in whatever you please, confirm, confirm, sign in. All right, here's the flag on the desktop. Let's go ahead and open that and see what's on there. THM, thanks for contacting support. Awesome. All right, that's the flag. Let's go ahead and answer these questions here. What flag was found? THM, thank you for contacting support. Process of granting privileges to a user over some OUs and other AD objects is called organizational. It's called delegation. And yeah, that pretty much sums up task 4 in the introduction to Active Directory and its capabilities for businesses and or IT support and etc. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. And that pretty much sums it up here for the introduction to Active Directory. Here we've gone over a little bit about delegation, organizational units, different departments, and how to RDP into machines, as well as reset user credentials via PowerShell. So if you like this, like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. All right, let's take a look at managing computers in AD. This will be part 2 here of the introduction to Active Directory. All right, welcome back. Here we're going to be taking a look at managing computers in AD, task 5 here. By default, all machines that join a domain except for the domain controllers will be put in the domain. By default, all the machines that join the domain except for the domain controllers will be put in the container called computers here. If we check our domain controller, we can see that some devices are already there. Workstations. Workstations are one of the most common devices within an Active Directory domain. Each user in the domain will likely be logging into a workstation. This is the device they will use to do their work or normal browsing activities. These devices should never have a privileged user signed into them. Servers. Servers are the second most common device within the Active Directory domain. Servers are generally used to provide services to users or other servers, ingesting data from other sources and XYZ. Domain controllers. Domain controllers are the third most common active device with an Active Directory domain. Domain controllers allow you to manage Active Directory domain. These devices are often deemed the most sensitive devices within the network, as they contain hashed passwords for all user accounts within the entire environment. Since we're tidying up our Active Directory, let's create two separate organizational units here. We'll do workstations and servers. Domain controls are already in the OU created by Windows, and we'll create them directly under the thm.local right here. Then we can proceed to answering the questions. After organizing the available computers, how many ended up in the workstations OU? And it's recommended to create separate OUs for servers and workstations, yay or nay. So we'll go back into our Active Directory here, thm.local. Create a new organizational unit for workstations. Let's go ahead and create our second one. Servers. And now we can move on to the additional tasks for the next questions. We'll take all these computers here and throw them into workstations. And we'll put the servers in the server. We end up with 7 and 3. Moving on to task 6, group policy. So far we've organized our users and computers into OUs just for the sake of it, but the main idea behind this is to be able to deploy different policies for each OU individually. That way we can push different configurations and security baselines to users depending on their department. Windows manages such policies through Group Policy Objects, GPO. GPOs are a simple collection of settings that can be applied to OUs. GPOs can contain policies aimed at either users or computers, allowing you to set a baseline on specific machines and identities. To configure GPOs, you can use Group Policy Management tool available from the Start menu. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. The first thing you'll see when you open it is a complete OU hierarchy as defined before. To configure group policies, you first create a GPO under Group Policy Object and then link it to the GPO where you want the policies to apply. As an example, you can see here, there's already some existing GPOs in your machine. Let's take a look at our machine. We have default domain policy here. GPOs are linked to thm.local. We have Group Policy Objects. GPOs created up here. Okay. We're also able to see the RDP policy. We can see the image above has 3 GPOs that have been created. From those default are the default domain policy, RDP policy, and thm.local, which are linked as a whole. The default domain controller policy is linked to the domain controllers, OU only. Something important to have in mind is that any GPO will apply to the linked OU and any sub-OUs under it. So for example, sales OU will still be affected by the default domain policy. Let's examine the default domain policy to see what's inside the GPO. The first tab you see when selecting GPO shows the scope, which is where the GPO is linked in the AD For the current policy, we can see that it has been linked to the thm.local domain. Here's a depiction of that. Basically, it's showing a basic configuration that's going to apply to most domains, including password and account lockout policies. So what you're looking at here is domain creation time modification. You can see links here, security filtering, policies. Feel free to explore more. Since the GPO applies to the whole domain, any change to it will affect all computers. Let's change the minimum password length policy to require users to have at least 10 characters in their passwords. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Let's make this a bit bigger. Default domain policy, edit. User configuration and computer configuration files are here. This will open a new window where you can navigate and edit all available configurations. Change minimum password length, go to computer configurations, policies, Windows settings, security settings, and account policies. All right. Account policies, we have password policy, we have account lockout policy, and we have Kerberos policy here. "24 unremembered passwords" here. In the password history, we have minimum password age 42 days, 1 day, password length here 7 characters. Go ahead and change this to whatever we'd like to. But 4 characters, 10 characters, etc. So you can see plenty of policies can be established. Let's move on to GPO distribution. GPO distribution. GPOs are distributed to the network via a network share called sysvol, which is stored in the domain controller. All users in the domain should typically have access to the share over the network to sync their GPOs periodically. The sysvol share points by default to the C Windows sysvol directory in each of the domain controllers in the network. Once a change has been made by any GPOs, it might take up to 2 hours for computers to catch up. If you want to force any particular computer to sync its GPO immediately, you can always run the following command on the desired computer. That would be gp update in your forcing update. As part of our new job, we've been tasked with implementing some GPOs to allow us to block non-IT users from accessing the control panel, as well as make workstations and servers lock their screens automatically after 5 minutes of user inactivity to avoid people seeing and leaving their sessions open. All right, let's go ahead with the first part. All right, let's go ahead and create a new GPO called Restrict Control Panel Access. And open it for editing. Since we want to use this GPO to apply for specific users, we'll look under user configuration for the following policy. User configuration policies. Here we have the control panel policy settings, or control panel settings. Here we have Windows settings as well. We'll go to the admin control, prohibit access to control. Let's see, we'll enable this. Disables all control panel programs and PC setting apps for the user. We'll hit apply, okay. Once the GPO is configured, we need to link it to all the OUs corresponding to users who shouldn't have access to the control panel of their PCs. In this case, we'll link the marketing, management, and sales organizational units by dragging the GPO to each of them. Here we are in the sales organizational unit. We can add that. Add the control panel policy. So as you can see in the diagram here, they've dragged the restrict control panel access into the management, marketing, and sales departments. Feel free to do that as well. After you've done that, moving forward, we're going to add a auto lock screen GPO. First, for the first GPO regarding screen locking for workstations and server, we could directly apply it over the workstation servers and domain controllers OUs we previously created. While this solution should work, an alternate consists of simply applying the GPO to the root domain as we want the GPO to affect all of our computers. Since the workstation servers and domain controllers are all child OUs of the root domain, they will inherit its policies. Note, you might notice if our GPO is applied to the root domain, it will also be inherited by other OUs like sales and marketing. Since these OUs contain users only, any computer configuration in our GPO will be ignored by them. Let's create a new GPO called Auto Lock Screen and edit it. The policy to achieve we want is located in the following routes. Here you can see we've added the management, marketing, and sales departments or organizational units to the restrict control panel here. Let's go ahead and go to the other policy. Let's create the GPO for the security lockout after 5 minutes. We've got to go to the security options here, set an inactivity to 5 minutes and automatically lock users out. Okay. Here it's under the policy security options. Alright, what is the name of the network share used to distribute GPOs through domain shares? Sysvol. Can a GPO be used to apply settings to users and computers? Yay or nay? Answer is yay. Let's move on to task 7, authentication methods.